The moment you cross the threshold into a room full of strangers, an invisible assessment begins. Long before you open your mouth, make an introduction, or state your business, the collective subconscious of the room is already sizing you up. In less than 7 seconds, people have made split-second judgments about your confidence, your social status, your competence, and whether you are someone who commands respect or someone who can be safely ignored. Most people treat this initial judgment as an unpredictable roll of the dice, hoping their personality will eventually shine through once they get a chance to speak. But high-level social strategists know that commanding respect is not an accident. It is a deliberate, highly predictable science of nonverbal authority. Dive into to understand how high-status authority works. You must first understand the default biological reflex of human groups. When a stranger enters an established space, the group's primitive brain instantly looks for signals of anxiety or submissiveness. The average person enters a room of strangers carrying a subtle, nervous energy. They make rapid, darting eye contact, fidget with their phone or clothing, adjust their stance repeatedly, and rush their movements as if trying to avoid taking up too much space. They radiate a subconscious plea for permission. Am I allowed to be here? Do you accept me? Dale Carnegie recognized that true social influence begins by reversing the psychological dynamic entirely. Respect is never granted to someone who begs for it through needy or over-accommodating behavior. Respect is drawn like a magnet to those who project complete, unshakable comfort in their own skin. When you enter a room, your presence should communicate a clear, unspoken truth. You do not need the room's permission to exist, nor are you seeking its validation. You are entirely at ease with yourself, and that effortless internal security makes everyone else instinctively adjust to your gravity. Mandard considered the physical anatomy of high-status entry. When a person of real authority enters a room, their physical tempo slows down. They walk with deliberate, measured strides. The head is held level, the shoulders are relaxed and broad, and their torso remains open, exposing their chest rather than defensively guarding it. Instead of darting their eyes frantically from face to face like a nervous bird, their gaze moves with slow, controlled calibration. When their eyes meet a stranger's, they do not look away first out of nervous politeness. They hold warm, composed eye contact for a full second, offer a subtle, genuine micro-smile, and calmly pan across the room, as if silently welcoming the room into their space. Notice the profound psychological inversion taking place. The average person walks into a room asking, "What do these people think of me?" The individual who commands respect enters asking, "What is the energy of this space? And who here is worth knowing?" This subtle shift in focus changes everything. It elevates your internal posture, cools your nervous system, and immediately alters how others perceive you. People naturally look up to those who appear unbothered by external judgment because internal composure is the ultimate proof of high social value. Mandate, however, commanding a room, goes far beyond physical posturing and entry mechanics. Physical presence gets you noticed, but psychological warmth and strategic connection are what turn initial intrigue into lasting, deep-seated respect. In the next phase, we will explore how to transition from commanding silent physical presence to mastering the art of high-impact, authentic interaction that makes every stranger in the room want to lean into your orbit. Respect is drawn like a magnet to those who project complete, unshakable comfort in their own skin. Once your physical entry establishes an initial aura of calm authority, the next critical phase begins the moment you transition into verbal interaction. The biggest mistake people make when trying to command a room of strangers is attempting to perform. They overcompensate for their internal nervousness by trying to be the loudest voice, telling elaborate stories, making sharp jokes, or dominating the conversational floor. But trying too hard to impress is the ultimate signal of low status. It broadcasts a desperate need for external validation, which instantly degrades the quiet respect you established when you walk through the door. Dale Carnegie cracked the code on this dynamic decades ago. To be interesting, you must first be genuinely interested. High status influence is not about forcing the room to look at you. It is about making the people you interact with feel seen, valued, and understood. When you give someone your complete, undivided attention in a crowded room full of distractions, you grant them a rare psychological gift, and they will instinctively associate that elevated feeling with your presence. Mastering this required cultivating the practice of high presence listening. When a stranger speaks to you, do not scan the room over their shoulder, looking for someone more important to talk to. Or keep your body angled toward them. Hold warm, attentive eye contact, and let your face reflect their emotions. Resisting the urge to interrupt or rush in with your own story creates a powerful psychological vacuum. The stranger will naturally open up, share more deeply, and view you as remarkably intelligent, charismatic, and trustworthy, simply because you had the self-assurance to sit back and listen. Learned, when you do speak, your vocal delivery must match the steady pace of your movement. Nervousness compresses the vocal cords, causing people to speak in a higher pitch, rush their sentences, and clutter their thoughts with filler words like or like. To project authentic command, speak from your diaphragm, allowing your voice to resonate at a lower, grounded pitch. Do not rush to fill natural lulls in the conversation. Use brief, deliberate pauses before answering questions. A well-placed pause demonstrates that you are not afraid of silence and that your words are worth waiting for. Consider how this plays out in a group conversation. Imagine a circle of strangers where three people are talking over one another, competing for airtime. Instead of jumping into the noise, you stand quietly, listening attentively with a subtle, relaxed smile. When a natural break occurs, you step in with a calm, well-formulated insight or a targeted question directed at someone who was previously cut off. Mark, you were making a point about the industry shift earlier. What's your take on where it goes next? And in a single move, you have completely restructured the dynamic of the circle. You didn't fight for attention, you distributed it. You acted as the quiet director of the conversation, elevating someone else while establishing yourself as the grounded anchor of the group. Everyone in that circle will notice your composure, your social awareness, and your effortless authority. You have demonstrated that real power doesn't come from taking the spotlight, but from knowing how to shine it. And however, holding a group's attention through conversational presence is only part of the equation. To build an ironclad personal brand that makes strangers remember you long after the night ends, you must learn how to handle social pressure, unexpected pushback, or subtle dominance plays without losing your cool. Real power doesn't come from demanding the spotlight, but from knowing how to effortlessly direct it. In any room full of strangers, you will occasionally encounter an individual who attempts to test your standing. Social hierarchy tests rarely come as blatant, hostile insults. Instead, they appear as subtle micro-assertions of dominance. A backhanded compliment, an intentional interruption, a condescending tone, or a dismissive joke made at your expense. The average person, rattled by this sudden threat to their dignity, makes one of two fatal errors. They either become visibly defensive and enter a petty verbal contest, or they laugh it off nervously and shrink back into the shadows. Both responses concede defeat. To maintain command of the room, you must master the art of unbothered boundary enforcement. When someone attempts a subtle dominance play against you, their goal is to trigger an emotional reaction to make you look flustered, angry, or eager to prove yourself. Dale Carnegie's approach to human friction relies on refusing to take the bait while maintaining total tactical composure. When you react to a provocation with complete emotional neutrality, you flip the pressure straight back onto the instigator, exposing their insecurity to everyone watching. Consider a practical example. Suppose you are sharing a brief point in a small group and a high-ego stranger cuts in over you, saying dismissively, "Yeah, but that's just a basic beginner way of looking at it." A reactive person might snap back, "I've been in this industry for 10 years. I know what I'm talking about." But that defensive outburst proves the insult hit its mark. Instead, employ the tactical frame hold. When interrupted with a condescending remark, pause completely. Stop speaking, turn your full body slowly toward the speaker, and hold steady, unblinking eye contact for 2 full seconds. Without breaking your calm expression, do not frown, do not scowl. Allow the silence to stretch across the room until the atmosphere becomes visibly uncomfortable for them. Then, in a lowered, completely relaxed tone, say softly, "Let me finish my thought first, and then I'd love to hear your alternative." Analyze the psychological destruction of that single moment. You did not raise your voice. You did not trade insults or list your qualifications to justify your intelligence. Yet, with absolute precision, you established an iron boundary. You highlighted their breach of social etiquette to the entire room while demonstrating that their disrespect did not affect your pulse by a single beat. You looked like the composed adult in complete control of their emotions, while they appear rude, impulsive, and desperate for attention. Bullion, this ability to stay completely unbothered under social pressure, creates what psychologists call high-status gravity. Strangers in the room quickly realize that you are an immovable force, someone whose boundary cannot be breached and whose peace cannot be disturbed by cheap parlor tricks. They see that you respect yourself far too much to engage in childish status games, and as a result, their respect for you deepens exponentially. Blends. When you combine physical presence, high-level listening, and cold, tactical composure under pressure, you become a formidable magnetic figure in any environment. But to turn a room full of strangers into an active network of high-value allies, you must master the final key: closing interactions with memorable grace and leaving a lasting legacy of value behind. When you react to a provocation with complete emotional neutrality, you expose the instigator's insecurity to the entire room. Once you have established your presence and demonstrated unshakable composure under pressure, the final phase of commanding a room of strangers lies in how you exit interactions. Most people linger in conversations long past their natural expiration point. They stay until the energy trails off. Awkward silences creep in, and the interaction slowly dies of starvation. By overstaying, they erase the sharp, high-status impression they worked so hard to build. High-impact individuals operate on a completely different principle. They leave every conversation at the absolute peak of engagement. Dale Carnegie emphasized that leaving people with an agreeable elevated taste in their mouth is the single most effective way to secure long-term goodwill. In social dynamics, the pecan rule dictates that people do not remember every minute of an interaction. They remember the peak moment of emotional connection and how the interaction ended. If you exit a conversation while the laughter is still fresh, the ideas are flowing, and the intrigue is high, you leave an open loop in their mind. They don't remember a tiring, drawn-out chat. They remember a magnetic, vibrant connection that ended all too soon. Exhausting a conversation gracefully requires zero awkward excuses or prolonged apologies. You do not need to invent a fake phone call or fabricate an emergency to step away. High-status communication is direct, warm, and concise. When the energy in a conversation is at its highest, hold up a gentle hand, offer a warm, genuine smile, and say, "I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, but I see a few people across the room I need to greet before the evening ends. Let's make sure we connect before we leave." Notice what happens in that moment. You didn't ask for permission to leave, nor did you sound dismissive. You validated the quality of the interaction, clearly stated your next action, and set an expectation for future connection. You control your time, and in doing so, you demonstrate that your time is valuable. People naturally respect those who move through a space with clear intent and purpose, rather than drifting aimlessly from group to group. And furthermore, if you wish to solidify that stranger as a permanent ally or high-value contact, execute the strategic follow-up. Before walking away, exchange contact information with a clear, specific anchor point based on what you actually discussed. An echo. Instead of a generic, "we should catch up sometime," tie your exit to a specific value point. "Send me that article on market trends we were discussing. I'll drop my email right here, and I'll send over that report I mentioned tomorrow." Land. Now you are no longer just an intriguing stranger in a crowded room. You are a person of value who delivers on their word. You have established a clear bridge from a chance meeting in a room full of strangers to a lasting, professional, or personal relationship built on mutual respect and shared substance. Chance. When you master the art of the high-status exit, you leave a trail of positive, high-value impressions behind you wherever you go. You move through a room not as a passive guest hoping to be noticed, but as a grounded, purposeful leader who commands attention effortlessly and leaves every room better than they found it. Exit every conversation at the peak of engagement. People remember the warmth of the connection and the strength of your intent. Commanding respect in a room full of strangers is ultimately an inside-out transformation. You cannot fake high-status body language, authentic listening, or composure under fire if your internal narrative is rooted in self-doubt, social anxiety, or a desperate desire for external approval. People possess a remarkably sharp instinct for incongruence. If your physical posture projects power but your internal state is trembling with panic, the room will sense the performance. True, magnetic presence is born the moment your external behavior becomes a direct reflection of an unshakable internal reality. Dale Carnegie spent a lifetime proving that the most influential figures in human history were not those who tried to intimidate or outshines everyone else, but those who mastered the art of self-command. When you step into any room, whether an elite executive gala, an intimate networking event, or a crowded social gathering, your primary task is not to conquer the room, but to conquer yourself. You are the sole curator of your emotional frequency. When you decide that your worth is already settled, you free yourself from the exhausting burden of trying to prove anything to anyone. Belly end. This internal freedom changes your entire aura over time. You stop measuring your value by how many heads turn when you walk in or how many people agree with your every word. Instead, you move through the world with a calm, patient, and inviting presence. Strangers are naturally drawn to you because you represent a rare island of stability in a sea of social noise. You offer genuine warmth without hidden motives, hold firm boundaries without toxicity, and listen deeply without competing for airtime. In doing so, you become the definitive anchor of any space you inhabit. Bendy, as you step into future rooms filled with unfamiliar faces, carry these core principles with you as your invisible armor. Remember to slow down your movements, anchor your posture in complete comfort, and breathe deeply from your core. Look people in the eye with genuine curiosity. Distribute respect generously and enforce your boundaries with cold, quiet dignity. Never forget that the strongest voice in the room is rarely the one shouting for attention. It is the calm, steady, unbothered presence that everyone else instinctively turns to look at when the noise fades away. Ben, you hold absolute sovereign authority over how you show up in the world. When you choose to embody self-trust, respect for others, and unyielding composure, you will never have to beg for respect in a room full of strangers. Again, the room will simply hand it to you. The strongest voice in the room is rarely the one shouting for attention. It is the calm, unbothered presence everyone turns to when the noise fades.